Happy Friday at about 10 o'clock. Yeah, 2 minutes after on the computer here. So that's pretty close. On Wednesday, I opened the box, cut open one of the envelopes, pulled out some parts to begin working on the Savoia S.21. And this is a really cool model because it's Porco Rosso's plane from the Miyazaki classic, Porco Rosso. So it's a 1/48 scale, made in Japan. The box top is all in Italian. The instructions are all Japanese, but I was able to make a breakthrough. I now have a complete color chart translating because of just a couple of subtle little clues through the instructions here. Was able to figure out what each of these numbers, which are the numbers in the boxes, relate to Tamiya colors. And we used those, and I happen to have all but like 4 of these. And the ones I don't have that I'm not buying, I'm buying the 4 that I'm missing. But the ones that I don't have that I'm not replacing are the metallics, because I have a lot of really good metallics, silvery metallics that I'm going to be using rather than just the Tamiya silver. So I'll be doing that. The first thing I'm working on, since I wanted to start out with something for which I had the paints and wasn't too terribly risky, is the cart. The Savoia is, what you can see it here in profile and on the cover, is a seaplane. So it has a hull, and it doesn't have wheels because it's supposed to work in the water, right? So when it's on land, it sits on this cart. The pieces are pretty good. I cut them off the sprues on Wednesday, and today I'm going to be filing and sanding them down and doing some of this initial assembly, okay, so that I can sand out the seams and do some filling on the sides here just to make them look better. So I'm going to get to that pretty quickly so that I can do the assembly, and if the cement sets up quickly enough, I should be able to sand off the seams and then actually get these pieces. Well, I have to just make a decision about whether I want to prime them and paint them before assembling the cart part, this part, everything but the wheels, or whether I am going to assemble it first and then paint it. And I'm kind of leaning toward the assembling first and then painting, because just the painting will there won't be gaps in it, and then there won't be the issue of the cement dissolving the paint and making a mess of things. So it looks like what I'm going to do is get the parts prepped, okay, which means sanding off the bits of the sprue that are still attached to them, assembling them here and here to these parts here, sanding off the seams and filling in the gaps, and then assembling the whole body of the cart, other than the wheels, which will go on after it's painted. Yeah. And the timing is a little awkward on this because I probably, I'm not sure if the cement will set quickly enough to do the seam sanding today, or whether that needs to wait till Monday. But we'll see, depending on how long the rest of this takes. If that goes along pretty well, I've got a little bit of a thing to do on the Apollo command module yet that I want to get to today. I filled in a gap, just where a slot fit into a tab on the very top of the command module, and it doesn't look good, so I fit it in, and I'm going to sand that down and paint it. But this, which doesn't look like very much, and it isn't, will get me at least started on the Savoia. And then hopefully the paints will arrive more quickly or not. than not, I can go to step one instead of, the end, and I can start pulling out the parts here. For the hull. The body of the plane lifts up off of the hull. This is sort of has a cutaway thing, just like the Apollo and the submarine did, so it's cool that way. But the interior detail of the plane, the fuel tank, the machine guns, the cockpit, fairly detailed cockpit, okay, the engine and the engine compartment, all of those are, anyway, they're pretty nicely detailed. And so I'm going to take a good deal of care in doing that. The lay is that it's kind of painted a yellowish wood color, and I don't have that color. So I ordered it, and when it arrives, I'm going to test it and see how it looks. But the whole bottom of the hull and the wood framing, some of these bulkheads are supposed to be painted to look like that wood. Kind of this yellowish bait. Here, you can see it here. Okay. So I'm going to paint it that base color and probably put a wash on it. Okay, so that it looks more like this. So it looks woody. But depending on how it goes today, I might pull out and cut out these parts and prep them just to move forward with building the model while I'm waiting for things to arrive. So some of this will go out of order depending on when these things arrive, right? The other thing I probably should do over the weekend is get some translation for some of these things. When you get an arrow with a question mark on it like that, that means something is supposed to maybe or maybe not happen, right? So, question mark and whatever that is. So I'll see if I can't do that. Some of these little bits of instruction probably are important. So that's the deal here. I'm going to be working on the Savoia, this part of it here. The parts I need for the cart I cut off and are contained in this container. Put them in here so that if they got knocked around, they wouldn't get lost. So there they are. I'm going to move the box because I don't need this right now. Keep the instructions here handy. Set that aside. I will get out. I need to cut off some good sandpaper and get a needle file. Could have been prepared for this, but I'm going to take this needle file. It's flat, but it's got a point on it in case I need to do some fine work. That's that. And I've got some 800 grit sandpaper, but I think I would also like to have some 600 grit so it cuts a little more quickly. Yeah, there's some 2000. 50, 400. There we go. But hopefully then I'll have what I need to get these parts working. Unceremoniously dump them. So the issue with the parts is that they're attached to the sprues, and I cut them off with a little saw, but that leaves a little bit of plastic left that needs to be filed down and then sanded off. And I know it's kind of a nuisance, you would think, to have to do that. I could have just cut them off more closely, but then that raises the likelihood, not just the possibility, but the likelihood of damaging the parts themselves. And the most the worst damage, but the one that is most probable is if one just breaks these off of the sprue, okay, that instead of having a little bit of plastic on the outside, it could break off and create a divot on the inside, and then that becomes much more difficult to work with. This is not that hard to do. Mostly just right on edges that are not going to be extremely sensitive to. No, they're not going to be much of a problem. Okay, what I'm doing here is I'm writing 600s on the sandpaper, because I found before that when I cut off smaller parts of this, without the 600 on it, I don't remember what grit it is. And I don't want this entire thing. I just want little pieces of this, right? Like that. And then I get out my handy sanding block. And I can wrap it around like this and get it fairly flat and just, yeah. You can see there's a lot of parts, so there's going to be a bunch of sanding here today. Getting this down. This is the kind of thing where I should be chatting about something. Also, I don't have anything much to chat about. 1950s and 60s kids shows. Did that. It wasn't actually a very good monologue. I have to say it wasn't all that great. It's talking about the Mickey Mouse Club. And the things I remembered about the Mickey Mouse Club is that each day was a special day of something. Okay. Talent Roundup Day or Cartoon Day or Anything Can Happen Day. And each day of the week was supposed to be a different thing. And when I was a little kid, I never really paid attention to which day was which. Was Monday this or Tuesday that? So I grew up being ignorant about that. Okay, those are mostly gone. I'll just show you how this works. These two parts get cemented together. Okay, and you can see that there's when edges like this are cemented together, they show seams, especially at the top here, which is actually going to be the bottom. But this is the top. So this is the most important part. The seams will get sanded so that they don't show. But I want to get rid of the little sprue bits. And then if there's need for additional plastic removal to make it look good, then that will be done later. The people who designed this and then produced it were actually thinking ahead a little bit. Unlike some of the other models where it was very poorly produced and not terribly well designed. The sprues, I don't know if you noticed this, but when these parts go together, okay, the sprue, which could leave potentially, a marred surface, right, or on the bottom of the cart. So unless one tips the cart over, it isn't going to show, and that is the case for all of these parts. These sprue bits are on the bottom. The wheels are an exception. Here, the sprues were attached to the parts that are inserted. And so that was actually really thoughtful. They could have just stuck them anywhere on the part, but they put them in a place where they would be the least visible. Well, other than a few places where there are these unforgivable little circles, in this case, they're on the inside of a piece that gets cemented together. I'll call it the build quality, but the quality of the injection molding on this model is the best of the 4 that I've built. Okay. The first one, most of you probably don't know that. At the very beginning of when I started building models, I did a big Ed Big Daddy Ross Fink Eliminator, which was something that I built when I was a teen. I really loved those Fink models. They were the best models I ever built when I was a kid in terms of painting and colors and cementing and getting rid of the seams and things like that. And I built a bunch of them, and I did cool stuff like with the Angel Fink. She's stirring a cauldron with smoke coming out of it. I got cotton ball and made it a multicolored layer, like put a little paint on some of the cotton and then put more cotton over it and stuff. It ended up looking really, to my eye, when I was, 14 or something, looking pretty good. Anyway, yeah, so this is the 4th one. The first one was the Fink Eliminator. And then I built the Renwall cutaway George Washington nuclear submarine, the prototype of the Polaris launching submarine. Okay, that's over there in a box under some paper towels because I have no way of displaying it. It's just too big. There's no place to put it. That was the build quality on that was really pretty bad. In fact, I had to buy 3 kits in order to get enough parts for one good one. Part of that is because these were actual vintage kits from the 60s. And they were already started. Parts sometimes were missing. They were open box started models. But I found that there were some parts where like an instrument panel with a lot of detail on it, dials and buttons and stuff, the plastic didn't fill the mold. So I ended up using parts from all 3 kits to build one. Some of them, some parts were just really bad. They had tiny little rice grain sized chairs, and the 2 halves of the mold didn't line up. So there are these tiny little chairs that one side of the chair didn't match the other side of the chair. That had to be filed down, so the chairs got a lot smaller and thinner. So this I can felt better by feeling it and seeing it. This was actually kind of, the way they did this was actually pretty good. Oh my, there's screws on it. I don't know why they did that. I didn't notice it on the top and the bottom. Is they molded this as two parts as opposed to one, so that it had the wood grain on both sides. I was talking about how thoughtful they were in terms of only putting the screws on the bottom, but that was only true of this part. This was connected in 4 spots. And so the top of this, let's see, once it's cemented together, and it might require a little bit of additional sanding in order to make the top of this look smooth. These little attachment points are almost like branches on a tree. You know, they don't stop at the surface. They go in a little bit. You know how you did a cutaway of a branch. The branch goes inside the trunk. It doesn't just attach to the outside of it. It just means twice as much time getting this part done because of the attachment point on the top. Anyway, what I was saying is that the build quality, the injection molding quality of this is way better than it was on submarine. And then the Apollo model, which I have, it's like 93% done or something. We were just waiting for the high quality vinyl printer paper with adhesive backing to arrive to create stickers, basically, kind of decal quality stickers of the instrument panels. And once those are done, then they'll just be stuck on, and then the command module can be completed. And once the command module is completed, then the thing is done. And then I will have another large model that I have no place to put. That wasn't grammatical, but what it meant was the model is large and I don't have any place to display it. So it's just going to be left in pieces in boxes like it is now, I think. Unless I get a bigger box. Maybe I'll get a bigger box so that instead of one piece per box, I have a box with multiple pieces in it. But then it would be a bigger box, and that gets to be a pain too. There's going to be a fair amount of painting on this one, so there will be relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons. But as I discovered with the submarine and continues through the Apollo to this model, probably with the like 40% of the time building something is filing and sanding, getting rid of little sprue bits, sanding out seams, that kind of thing, so that there's relatively little, compared to like a minifig painting. Something everybody who's watching this needs to deal with is watching me file and sand parts. It makes a big difference in the quality of the model, though. And while I continue to claim that I am not a master modeler or expert painter, because I'm not either, I'm just an old guy making models. On behalf of Dyson Dungeons, and you need to watch our Dungeons and Dragons show, you need to do that. Dyson Dungeons is about Dungeons and Dragons. You need to watch our Dungeons and Dragons show. Catch it on YouTube, and if you want, catch it with a live chat when it streams on Twitch on Sundays at 2. But what I have learned is that if the model's going to look decent, or as I like to say, pretty good, looks pretty good, then all this prep work, and then more prep work after it's cemented to get rid of seams, that kind of thing, this kind of stuff makes a huge difference in how it looks at the end. Because you can imagine that this piece here would not look nearly as good if it had these things sticking out of it than it would if it doesn't, right? So we get rid of the things sticking out of it. And then models look better when the seams don't show. Getting rid of the seams is just harder than it should be. And part of it is because I haven't found the right filler yet. I haven't found a very good seam filler. Keep trying. So I have either melt the plastic, creating yet more of a flaw, or don't sand smooth enough so that they have kind of a quasi-porous surface, which when painted, especially with a gloss or a metallic, is pretty obvious. So on the Apollo model, I had some adequate success in hi. I've had some adequate success in getting rid of the seams. So usually, unless if the light is straight on as opposed to an angle, and if you don't look at it too closely, most of the seams are pretty invisible. But getting rid of them completely has been just a little bit past my skill level. Spam chat. Somebody wants me to buy viewers. Maybe I should. Maybe then I'd get some people. I'd get more viewers. Although that why there are viewers for this, I'm not sure. I'm glad to be getting to this model, though. This was a gift from members of Dyson Dungeons because they know that I, kind of like to build models, do that. And also a fan of Miyazaki, and Porco Rosso is one of my favorites. So to get a real model of the Savoia was quite a thing. And so this came in second to the Apollo when it was what do you build after the submarine? I went through several options, and the Apollo won out, but now it's time for the Savoia. And I like the Apollo model because it, it does an adequate job of representing the spacecraft, and it came with this really cool Apollo storybook that I read last Friday. So if you want to hear it, along with some editorial comment, a little bit of editorial comment. Yeah, it was written in the 60s, so there. I'm just looking at some of the detail on here. Okay, that's I get it. There's little bits of squares here that are going to be painted a metallic color. That's where the wheels attach. But just above that is a rectangle. And I thought that might be metallic too, but that's not. This is built tongue and groove, and that's where the tongue comes through from the other side. This I'm expecting these parts to fit pretty well because the quality is pretty high, I think, in the injection molding. But as I was talking about it at the beginning, do I put the pieces together and then paint it, or paint it and then put them together? Another reason to put them together is in case in case they don't quite fit, and there needs to be some sanding or filing or whatever, or even filling to make them look good. That should be done before it's painted. Otherwise, the paint needs to come off and needs to be repainted. And touching up paint, sometimes it's successful and sometimes it just leaves a mess. So in this case, I am going to assemble the entire cart other than the wheels before doing any priming or painting. That way, if there are any issues, assembly issues like parts not fitting or whatever, I can take care of those before the painting is done. And gradually, I could probably move this down a little bit, couldn't I? Yeah, you can see kind of more of what I'm doing here. You can barely see the part sticking up there, but you can still see it as a little white spot there. That eventually should be sanded out. If I can't feel it, once it's painted, it's not going to show. But usually if there's a color difference like that, it means that it's visible. And as I said, I'll be sanding down these edges after it's cemented together anyway, in case there are any seams or things that are showing that shouldn't be. What I should have done in anticipation of having a monologue about the Mickey Mouse show is I should have looked some up on YouTube, some old episodes. I'm not sure. I don't even know if they can show them. Are they all copyrighted and Disney controlled? Probably have to pay for them. I don't know. There must be some on YouTube somewhere. Everything's on YouTube. Okay, that's coming along. These parts are kind of interesting. They fit. This wasn't printed as one piece. It's like this, and then these go on the inside as they fill in. These are the circles I was talking about. You can see some here. And I thought this model didn't really have any, but it does. But these are symmetric, so they can go either way. And I'm going to hide the circles on the inside so that they don't show. Either one is, yeah. After I'm done filing and sanding these, it's getting there. These are done. These aren't. Okay. This will take, the wheels will take a little while because they're harder to hold on to. We'll go to a place to grab them. Please go ahead and start cementing them. Then the cement can set, and these parts that I'm filing now, the ones that go inside of there, I'll show you in just a second after I finish sanding this. No, be careful. I could end up breaking in half by just the way I was holding it, putting too much pressure on it in a weird way. At least the parts so far are not so fragile. There's a couple of parts in the instrument, in the cockpit. Okay, there's control levers and stuff. Very tiny. I'm going to be doing those over a box already. I know they're going to have the same kind of treatment because they are attached to the sprue. So there'll be some pieces that need to come out. I mean, there'll be some stuff that needs to be sanded off. Being incoherent already. My incoherence is starting early today. Yeah, with their tiny, tiny little parts. They're exactly the kind of parts that'll be hard to hold on to while they're being sanded down, and will probably flip out of the fingers and land on the floor and be lost forever. Everything that has dropped on the floor, all but one thing in the entire Apollo model, it probably out of 5 things that have fallen on the floor, they've disappeared. Most of them were clear plastic pieces that were the windows, very small, transparent things that one of them I saw flutter. I saw where it landed when I looked down, and and then it disappeared. So the way these work is the circles go on the inside, and yeah, the little slots go on. Just checking, the slots go on the top. They fit in like this. Okay, so they fit pretty tightly, but you can see that it's supposed to be a solid plank of wood, and it is sort of visible. Okay, When the X is attached here, this whole seam on the top will be visible. So after these are cemented in, I'm going to put some filler in all the way around it and then sand this whole surface down. And that will make it look better than if I don't do that. Because then it will look more like a plank of wood than two pieces of plastic stuck together. I'm a little disappointed that they didn't, the wood grain is printed all around the outside of this really quite nicely, but not there. Not on this piece. One side of this, not the one with the circles, but the other side should have had wood grain painted on it, printed on it, so that it would look like the inside of the board. And so a little disappointed in that lack of detail. After it's painted and washed, it'll still look okay, but it won't look as good as the part that has the wood grain printed. I can tell that because I'm going to use the same painting scheme I used on these dungeon tiles, primed, base coated, and then washed. And you can see how the darker wash not only colored it, but brings out the grain that's molded in. Which is this on almost all of these pieces, but not all of them. Let's see. Reminder, I have now twice, so I'm going to continue with a change in the schedule for this stream. I'm going to be going from 10 until 1 instead of 2, with a very short, if any, break. So on Wednesday, for example, I didn't take a break. I just went from 10 until 1, or really close to 1. It depends on how much coffee I drink, pretty much, really. So far, I haven't had mine. Once I finish this piece here, I'm going to reach over and grab my official Dice and Dungeons mug. I'm not kidding. I mean, you've seen it. It is the official Dice and Dungeons mug. I'm going to grab that and have some coffee so that I don't doze off while I'm streaming here. Anyway, yes, instead of from more or less 10 until more or less 2, with a break that always went way too long in the middle, and it always did. Every single time the break ended up going too long. I'm going to go from more or less 10 until more or less 1, with, if there's a break at all, a very short break. Meaning, no more than 15 minutes. So the actual stream time, I shouldn't say the stream time, the actual doing something time will not be much shorter than it has been in the past. Maybe like a half hour less of actually doing stuff. But I found when I've done this, I did it by accident once and it worked out pretty well. I found by do it this way, it's just easier for me. Okay. And I have a little bit more time in the afternoon to get other things done, because believe it or not, I do have other things to do, like sit around and read the news, stuff like that. This is my official Dice and Dungeons. Let's see. Oh, by moving this, I got right in front of my face, didn't I? That's probably just as well. Yeah, okay. Each of these corners has a tab on it that fits into slots here. But it also has this extension, which is where the sprue was attached. So I need to leave the tab without the sprue spot. So what I am going to do, because I can, and it makes sense to do this just in terms of how far along things will go, is I'm actually going to cement these parts together after I'm done with this X and before I do the wheels, because that would give extra time for the cement to set. And then after it can go for at least a good hour. And then I can, if it isn't far enough along to sand the seams on these parts, at least it'll be far enough along that I can put the filler in. Yeah, I've decided that in terms of timing, that I'll cement these parts together and then finish the wheels while the cement is setting. Thinking ahead and planning. We don't do that very much on our D&D show. We pretend we do. We act as though we're making up plans. But in reality, our planning leaves a lot to be desired. There's a lot of spontaneity, okay, in the way the show goes, because sometimes things work, sometimes they don't. And of course, a DM, having ultimate control over everything, can either allow our plans to go, oh, that's really cool, let's just let you do that, or just can throw a wrench in the works, so to speak. I don't know that I think she might have actually once literally thrown a wrench in the works. Kind of one of those things you have to do. You just have to. Whenever the opportunity. I'm not sure I need to take, let me see how these go. Yeah, they fit in like that. Yeah, so that little bit of okay. Yeah, I don't need to sand these down so that they're perfect. I just need to make sure that the bits of plastic from the sprue are not in the way, because they disappear. Once it's assembled, these tabs disappear on the insides of these bits. If there's any issues with them, it will show up during assembly, but with that test fitting, it looks like it's just not going to be an issue. So this can be done quickly because it's not an issue. There. Okay. So the exciting, making a mess. If I don't make a mess, how do I know I'm doing anything? Big dust here. Get rid of some of it. Yeah, I'm going to do the cementing stuff. And I will grab this here. clothespins, so that when these parts are put together, very carefully cemented, don't get cement on my fingers, don't mar the surfaces, don't make a mess of everything. When these are put together, I can grab one of these and it will clamp it. I could even, since I've got a bunch of these, do that. Yeah, there we go. It holds the piece. So why not get on with it? Let's get on with it. So when I read a book once about how to make good models, how to make your model look pretty good, even better, like an A model, that said, to, that's why I'm testing the fit here, is get rid of the little alignment pins and sand the pieces down so that the edges fit together nicely. But as I'm looking at this, the edges fit together nicely. Okay, so I think at least this one's pretty good for that. Let's see how this one is. Yeah, the edges are pretty tight there. They align fairly well. Okay, so the thing here is to get cement on all the edges. I want cement on all of the edges, and I want it to actually ooze out just a tiny little bit because it dissolves the plastic, welds it together, and the dissolved plastic will actually fill in any gaps in the seams. And then that can be sanded down pretty easily, and then the seams don't show because it's been welded. So it's like if you were to actually weld something and then grind the weld down so that the weld doesn't even show, which is something I can't do. I've never welded anything, but I've seen that done. This is supposed to come out sparingly, and it just pours out. Doing it from the inside here, because all the excess then gets into the inside. That was impossible to do with tube cement. To make sure it's lined up on the top here, because there's always a slight misalignment that can happen. You want to minimize the sanding that would need to be done to even off the surface. So you can see there that you can still see the seam. Okay, you can tell there's a seam there. And the idea is that after the cement sets, that I can sand that down and the seam will disappear. That's the idea anyway. Slight misalignment will then disappear as well. Okay, there's that. This is always the hardest part for me. No, that isn't. I shouldn't say that. It's not always the hardest part. It is among the hard parts, getting the pieces aligned. Yeah, which is another reason why they need to be sanded down later. I mean, it's hardly anything. It's like fractions of a millimeter, but it's enough to show once it's painted. But that surface will be sanded, and so it'll look. Again, you can kind of see. You can definitely see the seams there. Yeah. Interesting. The center is raised up a little bit from the edges. But once the cement sets and it hardens, and I sand that down, that seam will be as pretty much disappeared. Okay, the trick here is to make sure that it's in the right way. Slots are supposed to be oriented. I will compare this to the instructions. Yeah, okay. That makes sense. There's a little bit of a divot here, a little bit there that lines up with the slots. And that all makes sense. It makes sense that it would be that way. Those are the slots into which there we go. These side pieces attached there and there. Whoa, that wasn't good. 10 things slipped. My hand didn't go where I wanted it to go. We'll just put it that way. At my age, one needs to celebrate every time one's hand actually goes where you want it to go. Seriously. Just wait until you're that old. Not on the outside, but there will be filler in the gap, and it will be sanded so that this amazing flaw that I have now put on this thing by getting cement on it. You know, the surface is now flawed. Well, but that will all be sanded off. That's unfortunate, though. I should have not done that. I did. And unfortunately, it is correctable. Okay. Just wanted to make sure it was put in the right place. Circles on the inside. Line it up like this. Cement oozed up. Okay. well, I do believe at least that I have attached the parts correctly. If I hadn't, that would be a huge disaster. I think I don't have a huge disaster, though, so that's good. Just a slight disaster. That will be corrected. So these are going to set. Okay. The insides of these, if you see it, you can see the seam all around there. And this is supposed to be one solid plank of wood, and it doesn't look that way. So after the cement sets for an hour or so, hour and a half, I'm going to get the filler and put some into all those little cracks all the way around it. And then after that hardens, that would be on Monday, or maybe over the weekend. I can do that. Yeah. No, I know they need to be assembled. So I'll show that all on the stream. So let you watch cement set. Get to watch that. I know. Yeah. So I'll fill those gaps in, and then on Monday I'll sand down all the seams, and then I can prime these pieces, and once they're primed, then I can do the painting. Boy, this is, yes, in terms of stream time, this is going to take a long time. In terms of real actual working on things, not so much. But the cement has to set, and then the filler has to set, and then it has to be sanded, and then primed and painted. So, I mean, if I were just doing this, I would have it done today if I worked through the day. But I can't, or if there was a stream tomorrow, or if I did it over the weekend. So I'm saying this out loud. What I could do is I could do the sanding down. If I put the filler in today, the sanding down and the priming could happen over the weekend. I'd assemble all these pieces, but part of the point of this stream is to show all the different steps that go into building this. And so this is what will happen. What will happen is I will get the filler in today. And then on Monday, I'll sand all the seams down, all right, and assemble the cart, these pieces here, everything except the wheels. I'm going to assemble those, and then the priming will happen after Monday, and then painting will happen on Friday. Why won't it happen on Wednesday? Because I can't stream next week Wednesday, because my non-studio, which is a workbench in the basement here, is going to be disrupted for 2 days as we get so a new furnace is being installed, and much more efficient furnace with a heat pump kind of unit. So we're being eco-friendly, and people are going to be working like 5 feet away from here and over my head and that kind of thing. And I'm sure that would be pretty exciting to watch. But there's always some, I don't know, there's some adjustments on here. There we go. Just trying to get it so it's not completely in my face. There, slide over a little bit. So these are going to set for like another hour. While that's happening, I'll clean up these wheels. That's something I can do, though. These wheels they get attached later at the end. They go in like that. And so I can the whole outside of the rim needs to be sanded. You can see it's really subtle, but you can see all around it where the two halves of the mold came together. There's a line there, and it shouldn't be there. So while these are setting, I'm going to get the wheels prepped. So it's taking off the bit for where the sprue was, but I want to sand the entire outside of the rim to get rid of those mold marks. It's a little thing, but I'm trying to hit on an A through F scale, like in school, right? You get graded. I think the submarine came out like a B minus, maybe. There were some parts of it that came out extremely well, like the galley. The galley on the ship came out really well, and some of the instrument panels came out really well, like the very forward bulkhead in the torpedo room. I think that looks really good, almost like a minus even, maybe even a solid A. But some parts were B minuses. And then on the Apollo model, I was going for a solid B, B plus everywhere. And I think I was pretty successful in doing that. But this model, I'm trying to shoot for like A quality work on the whole thing. Which means that when I look at the wheel, okay, and I see that there's a line where the two halves of the mold came together, I am going to sand the entire rim of the wheel so that I can't see that anymore. This is going to be painted metallic, and so a thing like that would be very visible. And this will take a little while. As I do this, it's not just getting rid of the sprue spot, but then sanding down the entire tire, really, the wheel. I'm not sure. I think the wheel is a solid casting, okay, but the hub is attached differently. So when I paint this, I thought about painting. I'll still have to think about that. Think about that until Monday when I'm going to actually paint the wheels. Because once these are prepped, I can prime them over the weekend and paint them on Monday. There isn't any reason not to, because I don't have any filler to set or seams to sand. But a decision I have to make is whether this wheel was cast as one piece, so that the outside and the hub and the wheel part and the tire part were all the same metal, or whether it was done as multiple pieces. And when I look at it, it looks like it's a solid wheel, like a railroad wheel. Oh, that's not a good example. Actually, railroad wheels have tires on them. I mean, not rubber tires, but steel tires. So the wheel is one piece of metal, and then there is another piece of metal that's wrapped around the outside. I know that because I saw that being done at Greenfield Village in their roundhouse. At least that's how it used to be when the historic locomotives were made. Get the lines out of this, go around, make sure that there are any flaws. I'm going to actually get some really fine grit sandpaper, maybe like 2000 or something, and polish the outside. But looking at this, I'm thinking this is just a cart. This isn't like a railroad wheel. This wheel might have just been cast as one solid piece, and so I'll probably paint the entire thing just one color, except for the hub, which is attached later and is going to be a different metal. So I was thinking of doing, but this is probably what I'm going to not do, was paint the inside of it like a lighter shade, of metallic, and then paint the wheel, the tire, the outside of it a darker one. I might still do that. Beam here is not disappearing as quickly as I thought it would. I don't want to take too much off. In that it only shows up under certain angles of lighting, but it's definitely there. I mean, it's okay to be taking time to do this, I guess, if I could talk about something while I'm doing this, because I have to wait for the cement to set anyway. But the presence of that mold mark, where the seams came together on the two halves of the mold, the presence of that on the wheel was sort of unexpected and unwelcome. And I can even see it when I'm sanding. When I sand it, the glossy surface of the raw plastic disappears. But when I sand it, and I can still see, if you can still see it there's a little band, little line of the shininess. That means that there's still an unevenness there. I know this is probably, I don't know, excessive, but I think, if one were if one were like to want to sell this model, right? If you wanted to have it high enough quality that someone would actually buy a completed model, this is something definitely a master modeler would do. Would definitely be doing this, because the wheel of the cart, it would show. I'm just sanding this down until it is uniform, and that means that if the light's not catching an irregularity, that it isn't there anymore. Well, I shouldn't say that, but at least it's not real obvious. Okay, well, this one's pretty good. Well, that was a lot more work than I expected. to get that wheel to look good, and now there's 3 more. I should be able to, at the rate these are going, I'll finish these about noon. And then I'm going to jump from these parts to the command module of the Apollo again, and just do that little bit of sanding and painting that needs to be done to fill in the alignment tab space that appears where the parachute container goes up. That wasn't a very coherent way of saying it, but you'll see it when I get to it. Same thing here. It's pretty obvious that there's the mold mark there on the wheel. I mean, it's pretty obvious. And if it were painted metallic, it would be very obvious. And especially if I paint this to make it look like a tire, a steel tire was applied to a steel wheel, like on a railroad wheel. It would really stand out as a flaw. Trying to get rid of the sprue mark. End up just going around the wheel over and over again until the little shiny spot doesn't show anymore. It's just like the other one. So I may not be a master modeler, but I'm getting better at it as I'm working on these, and I'm certainly way better than I was when I was 12. I have to say that. I can say that with a lot of confidence, that the quality of the build here, like a submarine, when I built one of those when I was about 12, and it was a pretty cool model, but I didn't take nearly the care that I did this time to paint all the detail, like the dials on the control panels, okay, or the pipes on the floors of the missile areas, or the tool, the mechanical rooms, the engine rooms. What I don't remember, and this was the case in the model, is that the periscopes were misaligned. They come down from the top and they go into these tubes in the command room, and they didn't match up. They weren't vertical. They were off by more than 1/16 of an inch. I mean, a whole lot. And I tested it on all 3 models, and all 3 had the same misalignment. So I actually had to modify the location where the tubes for the periscopes attached to the floor. And they ended up looking okay. And I thought, well, okay, it's not, I'm not sure what the deal was there. But then I went on eBay and saw a picture of a completed model. And someone hadn't gone out of the way to fix the misalignment. And they were at an angle. So it wasn't just me. It was like the design of the model itself was screwed up. Anyway, that's an aside. Because I don't I wanted to talk about the Mickey Mouse Club, but I just can't remember much more about it. They all shouted their names at the beginning, and I'm vaguely recalling there were two guys who ran the club. I think one was named Jim or Jimmy, and I think the other one was Roy. And I'm not sure what Roy did much, but I think there was. And I think we were all supposed to have a favorite Mouseketeer. I don't know why. It was just a thing. Parents asked that. Oh, who's your favorite Mouseketeer? Like, I don't know. Just made something up. It's pretty young then. Most of the Mouseketeers were, older than me. All of them were. But there were two that were younger than everybody else. I think the boy's name was Cubby. I don't know. That can't be a real name. I can't imagine somebody growing up being, hey, Cubby, executive vice president of engineering or something. His name Cubby, maybe. I don't know. And then there was a girl who was younger too, and I can't remember her name. I know there was a Tommy. It has to be a Tommy. I don't know. It's just weird that what's true was it just like formed an indentation. Should have been a raised spot, but it's an indent. Yeah, that one's not too bad now. Okay, well, that wasn't too bad. I thought it would take longer than it did. It felt like it took a long time. I remember more about the Mickey Mouse Club show. It was kind of like a variety show, really. I think each of the Mouseketeers had some sort of talent that they showed off every once in a while. And they did that outside of Talent Roundup Day because it was their show. They didn't have to be rounded up. Well, yeah, Talent Roundup Day had sort of a Western theme. That's why it was called Roundup, right? Like rounding up cattle. We all knew what that was at that point in history because half of the shows, if not more, on television were Westerns. We learned all sorts of cool things watching these Westerns. Like really, really amazing racist things about Native Americans, Indians. Every once in a while, a show had to have a good Indian. That was that. When you think about it, that was like Tonto to the Lone Ranger, sort of the token good Indian. What can I say about those times? It's kind of you look back at it and I can't believe that's what was really going on, but it was. But we learned other things like get along, little doggy. I don't know what they called calves, cattle calves, doggies. really felt really cool because we learned a real Western slang term. Those were wonderful, innocent days where we could watch Westerns. The thousands and thousands of Westerns ranging from, there was one about everybody, Davy Crockett, Wyatt Earp. And Bowie. They all had theme songs that sounded pretty much alike. But we all thought we were learning. I mean, seriously, we were little kids, right? We were like 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. We thought we were learning things like these Westerns where it had some historic truth to them. So it's probably true that we did learn that they called calves doggies. They probably did do that. What we learned about Davy Crockett and Jim Bowie and Wyatt Earp and these other people who were truly historic. I mean, they existed. They were real people, but the way they were portrayed on TV, I'm sure, was not historically accurate. So we weren't learning about real history, but we thought we were, because that's how that's what we learned. How we learned about indigenous culture. Is how it was represented in the Western TV shows and the movies. Innocent times. So, yeah, there was that. Finally, on the third one, learned that if I rested against the cardboard here and sand down onto it, that it's much easier to hold and put pressure on. And the light's shining on it just right so I can see if I'm getting the old marks off. They're being surprisingly persistent here. Just convince myself that it's better than it was before. Okay, that's 3. Get this one done and knock it around. And then I'm going to get some finer grain stuff, like 1,000 grit or something, and then run it around the outside of it. Just get rid of. I don't want the outside to be perfectly smooth. Now that I'm thinking about it, if this was a real cart, these steel wheels would be running on stone and stuff, and it wouldn't be smooth. It would actually be kind of rough. It would be kind of beat up. So I'm going to not do what I said. What I'm going to do is not do what I said. I am not going to get fine-grained sandpaper and polish the outside of the wheels. I'm going to leave them kind of rough. This is 600 sandpaper. It's not polishing them, but in reality, these things would be pretty beat up. It'd be pretty rough, the surface, because of running along on cobblestones and dirt and things like that. And so, yeah, I think this is actually a good thing. That, in fact, I probably could get even a coarser grained maybe 150 or something, and just go around the outside and rough up the surface rather than polish it. What do you think? That actually might be the right thing to do, is to make the surface of the wheel even less smooth than it is with this sandpaper. The mold mark on this wheel is the seam between the two halves of the mold is very prominent on this one. So, yeah, just wandering around here. So I started talking about Westerns because on the Mickey Mouse Club show, Talent Roundup Day was Western themed. And I remembered the song that they used to sing to the people at the end who got rounded up, the person whose talent was demonstrated. As they go, here's your hat, here's your ears. You're an honorary Mouseketeer. Trying to remember why did they say hat? Because the ears were attached to like a beanie kind of thing, but that isn't what they meant. They gave them a cowboyish hat because it was Talent Roundup Day, and that was the reference to the hat. Is they got a prop cowboy hat for having been rounded up as talent. And then, if I remember correctly, they had they did these serials, where there were little like daily episodes that went maybe for the week of like a five episode series. I think one. I don't think it was a separate show. I'm pretty sure it was on the Mickey Mouse Club show, Spin and Marty. Remember who they were, what they did. I think they were sort of there was a lot of Western themed stuff. And then there was a sort of a mystery thing that had to do with trying to find Applegate's treasure. I don't remember if they actually ever found it or not. But old Applegate had a lot of plundered gold doubloons and pieces of 8. So plundered Spanish treasure, I guess, is what it was, or Spanish plundered treasure. And Applegate passed and the treasure disappeared, so somebody had to find it. That's what we learned, cool words like doubloon and pieces of 8. What's that? Oh, that's old money. Spanish conquistador, colonizer dollar, coins, currency. If I'm going to go over I don't know why I didn't think of that earlier. If I'm going to go over this with an even coarser sandpaper to rough up the surface, why didn't I do that to begin with? And then this whole thing would have been faster because the coarser paper would have cut more quickly. Well, I didn't do that, and so I'm not going to. I'm going to go say, I never thought of that, because then if I had thought of that, then I would have done this and it would have been faster. But now I'm going to say that's not something I would have ever done, so I did the correct thing. It's just making myself, believe that I made the right choices here. But I'm glad I've done this because the raw plastic surface, with the seam from the mold, would not have looked as good once it was painted as this will. Doing this, I'm thinking about how I'm going to paint this. If I paint the hub a different color, so as I look at this, just thinking the way this is constructed, that the whole wheel, including the tire, the outside part of it, needs to be one color, but the hub can be another one. I'm going to try this, thinking, how am I going to hold this while I'm painting it, right? So if I can get, it is possible. I can grab this is the bit there. This is the part that gets inserted into the side of the side of the cart. Okay, that's the attachment point. I can just grab that with an alligator clip, and hopefully while I'm painting it, it won't pop off and go flying somewhere. But it looks like I can grab that. So what I can do, I'm talking to myself about the process here. So the process can be that I can paint this, okay, this whole side of it, grab that there, and then finish painting the rim and this. And then after that's done, at some later point, I can paint the hub. And in fact, that might be painted two different colors. If you can see, it looks like there's the equivalent of like a washer, okay, around this. So I might paint that a different color than that. I'm not sure. Or it might just be one piece, like a cap that was attached to the end. That might be more likely what it is. The painting instructions say just paint the whole thing the same color. But I'm thinking the hub part should be different. Sure, what color yet? I was thinking of painting this whole thing steel, which is a nice, really dark, really nice dark metallic color. But then the hub would be painted a lighter color. And I think it would look better if the hub were darker than the rest of it. So I think I might paint the whole thing like dark aluminium, which is also a pretty dark color. And then paint the hub steel. I don't know. Think about it. The box top doesn't give any real clues. I think these are ready to prime though. To be, it's a two-step process because there's two sides. So unless I can suspend these somehow, and I don't have a way of doing that, what I'm going to do is get a little bit of, I'm going to tape, if I spray these, they go flying, right? They need to be done on two sides. So I can do the inside of the wheel first, flip it over, do the outside of the wheel, and then they'll be primed. And then for the painting, as I said, I'm going to paint the inside here first, grab onto that with an alligator clip, hopefully not lose it, and paint the rest of it. and then after that dries, I'll paint the detail on the hub. But the more I think about it, I'm pretty sure that it would look better if the hub were slightly darker than the rest of the wheel. Why do I think that? I'm not really sure, but that is what I think. That's these little bits of cardboard that I use for this purpose. Sometimes I use two-sided tape. In this case, I'm just going to use this masking tape, roll it around on itself like that, right? Just stick it on here. Goes on first. Then I want to do this right, and the right thing to do is wash those to get rid of the dust and the fingerprints. So I am actually going to do the right thing here. Get that ready. Is get a little paper towel, a little bit of paper towel here, and some isopropyl alcohol, which used to be right there. There used to be a big container of isopropyl alcohol, and now there isn't. Why it would have moved. I'm looking in the mess under the workbench here. Well, fortunately, I have a little bit here. This has been used for washing brushes, but there really isn't any pigment in it. So the reason I'm doing this is to get the sanding dust off of them and fingerprints and things so that the primer will adhere. Showing up. This is like master modeler skill level kind of thing. Put on a glove. Not to protect my hand, but to protect the surfaces of these so that I'm not getting fingerprints all over them. Look at that. I am being like master modeler level thing here. If you're serious about modeling, this is actually what you should do. Is you should not get oily fingerprints on your pieces before they're painted, and should clean them like this. Okay, and wear a glove like this because that's what keeps you from getting fingerprints on them. So I spent like an hour on these, almost 45 minutes on these four wheels. But what I've done is not just gotten the little sprue marks off, but I pretty much got rid of the seam that was showing from the process of having these molded, and the seam was really obvious. It was very obvious, and I think I've succeeded in getting rid of it. I can imagine I'm still seeing little bits of it, but I have to, my eyes are not great. So if I put my head magnifiers on and I look at these, I see that there were still flaws in them, but I'm building this model to the naked eye quality, not viewed under magnification quality. But these can be primed over the weekend, and then on Monday, I can paint them. And it won't be, it's not going to be real exciting painting. It's going to be, well, the exciting part might be as I paint them and I try to use the alligator clip method on them, having them pop off and fly and maybe get lost. I'll try to take precautions against that. Let's see. But these are ready for priming. I prime this side. I'll turn them over. Hopefully they'll adhere enough on the little hubs, and then prime the other side, and then bring them back up for painting on Monday. I could prime this piece, but I'm not going to. I made the decision that this cart body is going to be assembled. I'm going to assemble it completely before I paint it, so that if cement gets in the way or I have to do a little bit of adjusting for the fit and finish, that kind of thing, that will all be done before it's painted, rather than messing up the paint otherwise. I'm just looking at the color chart. 13 is metal. They only have one silver color for this whole thing, and I've got maybe 7 different shades of metallics, silvery metallics, and I'm going to take advantage of them on the model, just on the wheels, by painting the hub a darker color than the rest of the wheel, but not going all out by painting the inside of the wheel and the outside of the wheel different. I will say these are just cart wheels, and they were just cast as a solid piece, not like railroad wheels where there is a wheel and then there's a much harder iron tire that's put on the outside of it. Oh yeah, let me go on to this other bit I was going to do. These parts, you can still watch cement dry here, but we're here in this box. Underneath all this other stuff is the parts for the command module. Is there a toothpick in the door? There's a toothpick in the door to prop it open, because if it closes, I can't open it from the outside, and that will be a problem later. Okay. What happened with this model is this is the parachute holder thing that goes on the top of the command module that holds the parachutes. The parachutes are behind these 3 parachute covers. Okay. These mechanisms here hold the drogue chute and the pilot chute, which stabilize the capsule and then slow it down just enough so that the main chutes can go up and deploy without being ripped off. But because this is a plastic model and not the real thing, there was an alignment tab here and a gap in this circle. And I thought, this is going to be visible when the whole model is completed. It doesn't look good. And so I filled it in. Now I'm going to sand it down. Sand the filler. this sanded, okay, so that it's even. I'm going to paint it the metallic color, and it isn't going to be a perfect. Isn't going to be perfect because the filler is a slightly different texture than everything else, but at least there won't be a gap there. Okay, the gap will be gone. I'm going to leave the tape on here. It's protecting the white paint underneath. As I said, it isn't going to be a perfect thing. It won't be like perfectly seamless. You probably will still see that there was a patch there, but it will look like maybe a weld or something like that, as opposed to just a gap. I need to get that sanding dust out of there. There's sanding dust right along here. Just cleaning that off. Okay. Well, I think that patch is on there as good as the patch is going to be. Get a little brush. Yeah. It's too bad that the microphone filters out so many sounds because I just knocked something over. Yeah, I'm using this color called Dirt Aluminium, which is one of the many metallics that I've got. Oh, I should probably use my paint stirrer thing here. And I'm not even going to, it's such a tiny spot. I'm not going to bother squeezing any out into the palette. Whenever I open these containers, sometimes they actually even splatter. There's plenty of paint up in the little nozzle. Okay, right up on the tip here. There's usually more than enough paint. Usually, but there isn't this time. Oh, here it is. It's up in the cap. Top of the cap here. One can see, if you look really closely, kind of the edges of the patch. But also, there's not a gap there anymore. I succeeded in getting rid of, I did succeed in getting rid of the gap. I'm not quite sure why it's darker on the top. Lighter on the side here, but it is. Yeah, I just got paint on that, so there it is. Just blending the colors. Okay, so if you didn't know it was there, you probably wouldn't see it. I do know it's there, so I can see it. But like I said, it doesn't have this stupid gap anymore. And it was a stupid gap. It looked bad. Now it looks better. That was one of those little detail things. going from a C quality model to a B plus quality model. We're doing that little detail work. Now I get to put it back in the box. At some point, I'll take the tape off. Four hands here. I want to keep the toothpick in place, but the box top will stay open. There. That's done. I know that wasn't much, but it was important. What do I got? 45 minutes left. I can. I'm going to wait until. Okay. Trying to see the time. It's only noon, so I've got an hour yet. I'm going to let these set yet. I want the cement to cure as long as possible before I mess with these things. And by messing with them is what I mean is that I want to fill in. I keep saying this is supposed to be a solid plank, okay? And on the front, if you look between the toothpicks, you can see this is a solid plank. But if you look in the back, you can see that it's not, because this other piece of plastic was attached. And so I'm going to get some filler material and put it in the gaps all around the edges here. Just push it down in there, build it up a little bit. And then on Monday, sand the whole surface down. And I'm going to use a pretty coarse sandpaper, not the 800 grit. I'll probably use I'm not sure I'll go all the way to 150, but probably like 200 or something. Because I actually I'm going to sand across this way, and I actually want there to be the resemblance of a little bit of wood grain on this otherwise flat surface. So this whole surface is going to be sanded down with that coarser sandpaper. And then after that's done, I'll sand these pieces down also, because you can see that see the seam there where the two halves came together. I'm going to sand that off so it doesn't show. And then I'm going to assemble these into the body of the cart. And then that will get primed. And then I will paint it. And after that's all painted, okay, then the metallic detail, the clamps, there's clamps on here. There's like little rings that you can't see because there's clothespins holding it together. There's little rings to which you can attach a chain or a rope to pull the cart. Okay. There's a bracket that holds together the center of this, and little brackets on the sides that are reinforcements for where the wheels go in. What would be cool is if the wheels actually rotated. I wonder if that would, no. I mean, there's no, they'll fit in the hole, but if they turn, they're going to pop out. I'll try it anyway. I'll do some test assembly on it after I unclamp this later today, like in 20 minutes or so. So the color scheme on the card is is the same I used here. The color that they suggest painting these is called red-brown, which when it's dried actually looks kind of like this, but we get a much better effect by putting in a lighter base coat and then using this smoky ink wash, which gives it a really rich wooden look. Nice rich wooden look, and brings out the detail of the wood grain, which disappears when it's just flat. So I'm going to mess around with that with little detail too. Once that's all done and washed, and so there's this bracket here. If you see it, this is a metallic plate that holds the pieces together and reinforces them. That gets painted probably the same color as the wheels, dark aluminium. But it's got these spots there. Those are rivets. And I am going to touch those lightly with a felt tip pen, just so that they'll be blackish, darkish, since the model maker went through the trouble of designing and then molding those little rivets on. They might as well be visible. And the rivets are not this, or bolt holes, I'm not sure. They might be bolts. Bolts or rivets are not going to be the same metal as the plates, so we'll do that. No. All right. So that's that. I'm going to now put this stuff away. Since I've got like 20 minutes before it is time to put the filler in, I'm going to find the next pieces. I'm not going to be able to get too far with these. I can prep them for assembly, but I can't prime. I can maybe even prime them. I could probably prime them if I got them done. I just don't have the paint yet for the hull and the wooden components. But I'm going to go up to step one. I'm going to find these pieces and prep them as far as I can get today. I'm not going to assemble them, but I can get them ready to be assembled once the paints arrive sometime next week. So this is easy to find, right? That's pretty easy to find. And then this is this component here, which is wooden reinforcement and part of the cockpit. This is B29, and this is B30. And if I am, this is definitely 30. It's 32. Huh. Which one is 29? There's 29. Okay. This is 32. That's this one. And this is 31. That's this one. Oh, okay. Huh. I was wondering. So this is a question mark here about what gets attached to it. And there's two choices, B33 and B34. Those are the instrument panels. One has a choice. You can see them here. One has a choice of an instrument panel that needs to be painted or a flat one onto which a decal is attached. And I know these look better if they're painted, but since I have a choice, I'm going to take that choice and attempt to paint it. And if it comes out well, then I'll use that. And if it doesn't, then I'll use the cheat one, which has a decal applied to it. But the instrument panel is pretty well molded. I'm looking at it. There's little dials in there, and they've got little hands and markers and stuff on them. So if that can be painted, if it's not too far beyond my skill level, that will look pretty good. Okay. So I need this piece, this piece, this piece, this piece, and whatever these 14 15, 16, 17. These are these. Okay. They look like they're painted really dark gray. So I think they're meant to be like radiators. Not sure. They have detail imprinted on them. Mm-hmm. But I can move the parts out of the way. I'm going to get my expensive saw. This is the thing I use for cutting them off with a sprue instead of a razor blade or something, because it minimizes the chance of damaging the part. Because I can cut it with some precision a distance away from the part itself, which leaves a lot of plastic on the part, which makes for tedious sanding and filing, but also doesn't damage the part. So this is molded really close to the color it's supposed to end up being. I mean, they might as well just have molded it in white, because it'll look a lot better if it's actually painted, right? So the painting instructions say painted. So it's going to get painted. Be careful here. This is wanting to break off. I don't want it to break off. I want it to come off where I'm cutting it. There. I'm getting the sprue off of some of these. It's okay. It's at the same level. There's an indentation here. This is all of the detail of the can of the inside goes on here. Okay. But then it gets painted. So the thing I'm not happy with this. There's several problems. One is, the biggest problem is that there's all these circles everywhere. If you can see them. Okay. Everywhere, and they're indented. If they were raised above the surface, I could sand them down, but they're indented into the surface, and they're going to show, because the top of the plane, the fuselage of the plane lifts up off of this to show the detail on the inside. And unless these get covered somehow, it's just bad. So I'm going to try to fill these in. They're not going to totally disappear because the surface texture of the filler is different. But this is supposed to be wooden planking, and they don't have circles. So I'm going to test fit some of the parts to see if it covers it up. But it's likely that I'm going to be spending some time trying to fill those circles in. Okay, this is very delicately attached. Sure, while I'm cutting. This is why I'm glad I've got a saw instead of just a razor blade, although the blade is binding on the plastic. Okay, I'm just messing with a part here that could be broken, and I don't want to break it. I'm not quite sure where the edges are supposed to be. It's hard to see while it's still attached, so I'm trying to leave a fair amount of plastic on it. It reminds me of some of the little delicate bits on the lunar module. That's making a really good high-pitched squeaky sawing noise that you can't hear. It would be very annoying if you could. Yeah, these parts need a fair amount of cleaning up. So numbers that I need: 29 and 30. Okay, I know this one is 30. This part in here, I'm going to put this in my container of parts. Put this one in here too. In a handy dandy container of parts so that they don't get lost parts. This one was 29. The interior detail is pretty good. Like they have little cross braces on here. They didn't do wood grain on them though. They should have done these with wood. Oh, there's a stupid circle there. It's gonna have to be sanded out. Someday I'm going to do some research and find out why these injection molded model parts all have little circles on them. I don't know if you can see this, but it's right there. See this? You can see it flash in the light. And these are pieces of wood. They don't have little circles in them, so I'm going to have to sand this whole thing down to get the circle out. I think, unless by some miracle it's invisible, because it's right at the top. See, it's right up here at the top where it can be seen, and that's unacceptable. It's just not acceptable. Okay, these are supposed to be a pair. I'm going to do this. I don't want to lose track of what these parts are. Okay. If I lose track of what the parts are, I might end up not being able to put them to stop it. What I'm going to do is put a piece of tape sticky side up here. A temporary thing here. Get my pen, which I very, very cleverly managed to set down somewhere near here, and I was using it and now it's lost. Seriously. The black felt tip pen that I had, it's always there. So always put your stuff away. When you're done with it, no matter what it is, no matter anything, no matter what, just put it away so that when you need it again, you can find it. Okay, don't just stick it on the side there where it can't be found. $15, $15, $16, $17. Yeah. This is just a temporary thing. so I don't misapply these parts. You can see me looking closely at these things, like getting up really close and trying to squint and see them. It's because I've got old eyes, and old eyes are, they just leave something to be desired in terms of focusing ability. I can see pretty well really close up. Can't see very well far away. This is 17. There. That's why I take my glasses off when I'm working on these things, so that I can see them. I can't see close up with glasses on, but I can't see far away with my glasses off. Can't. Yep. These fingers work. Sure they do. Fumble, fumble, fumble. Can't pick up a toothpick. Can't pick up. 16. There. That's just going to stay there until I get around to cleaning these up. And until actually they're assembled, probably. Going to be a quasi-permanent thing here. A parts holder. You can see the little bits. These little bits here are all control things. They're like levers and handles and stuff like that. They get painted multiple colors. And it's just part of the detail of the interior of the cockpit of the Savoia. So one other thing I can do, other than doing an inventory of these parts right now, I've got this bit. I've got 14, 15, 16, and 17. And I've got this, 29 and 30. I've got all of these for this assembly. And the next steps are these tiny little bits. Probably won't get to those today. I can take this. This is the other thing I want to do. The instructions say, tear up and discard the plastic bag. Otherwise, you'll put it on your face and suffocate. They're very insistent about their safety directions. Even so, they're so insistent that it's all but one other sentence in the instructions. It's the only part that has an English translation. This is the bit I want to do. This is Porco Rosso. We got a Porco Rosso minifig. And if I prime this, I can work on painting it next week. So on Monday, I've given you a preview of what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be sanding these parts down, painting the wheels, prepping these pieces, doing some test fitting, waiting for the paints to arrive. But the other thing I can do, since I have most of the colors, is I can actually start working on the Porco Rosso minifigs. There's two of them. There's this one, the one that's standing on the outside. It comes with a little platform. Why not? Since I'll do it. And then there's another one that sits inside the cockpit. That one comes with its head off. I guess that's going to wait for a bit. I'll get to that next week. But let me get the sandpaper and file back out again. Let's see how well this is molded. I don't see. Yeah, there's seams on it. This is going to take a while to clean up. I'm not going to be able to clean it up today. Maybe I'll work on it a little bit later. But I need to. There's some things I definitely need to get done yet today, and that is not one of the essential ones. Take these parts that are put on that tape so that I can see which is which. Okay. Yeah, in order to get the cart going, this needs to be filled in. So if you look at them now, okay, you can see on this side that it's a plank of wood, right? That's very nice. It's a nice plank of wood. With it's got a knot in the. That's pretty cool. A big knot in the. I thought that was a flaw, but it's not. It's molded in. But this side doesn't look like a plank of wood. It looks like a piece of plastic that's been inserted. And there's gaps all around the edge where it went in. So what I'm going to do with this is get some filler and push it down into those gaps. Okay. And then on Monday, I'm going to sand it against, just get a piece of fairly coarse sandpaper and go back and forth in this direction to make it have a kind of a rough surface, kind of wood grainy. And hopefully most of this edge will disappear and it'll look like a plank of wood. There's a fair amount of excess plastic on there, probably, I don't know, like a hundredth of an inch maybe. The outside edge is raised compared to the inside. It's just the way it fits together. It had to be in order to fit. So there's that. I'm going to use this drywall compound stuff. This filler seems to work as well as anything that I've got. And I had some pieces of paper here. And I don't want a pointy toothpick. I want a flat-edged toothpick. There. Need to stand down to a flat edge so I can use it like a little spatula. Cool. A little spreading tool, okay, that I can use to spread the compound around the edges. There's going to be a lot more on there than I need, but I want it to be above the surface so that I can sand down to it. I really need to I need to do some research really and find something better. A filler that actually does work pretty well, I used it on a model ages and ages ago that I've never finished, is auto body putty, because it dries really hard and can be sanded down to a very smooth surface so that it actually matches the rest of the surfaces. Okay, this isn't that smooth. For this purpose, it's okay. It's a tiny crack. that's getting filled in, and it's supposed to look like wood when it's all done. I push it down into it and leave a bunch on the surface that can be sanded off later. But and I used it on a model before, but I don't know if the formulation changed or what. But the last time and maybe it wasn't just mixed well, I'm not sure. It dissolved the plastic. Okay. So yeah, it was great. It sanded down. It was very hard, the polished surface, but it dissolved the plastic around it. And so there was this halo, basically, I call it that, this area around it that was marred, where the surface was marred. And it took a good deal of sanding. This is just being a mess. It's fine, because this is all going to get sanded down. I just want to make sure that the openings are filled. Pushing it down into the gap. Yeah, so that was really disappointing, and it took a good deal of sanding to repair the damage. I might try it again. I'm going to try it again, and maybe even on some of the excess sprue for this model. I might cement a couple of pieces of that together, leaving a gap, and then get the auto body putty and see if I can get it to work. Because if there are gaps that need to be sanded so that the surface ends up looking the same, shiny, or at least the same level of polish or whatever. So if the surface texture needs to look the same all the way across, that's the filler that works the best, as long as it doesn't dissolve all the plastic around it and then make a mess of it. So this is very amateurish, okay? I'll just admit that. Just trying to squeeze this stuff down in there, and as I said, this whole surface is going to be sanded pretty significantly, because the edges are raised up above the rest of it, and those need to be sanded down. The edges sanded down to the level of the rest of this. So I'll be using a fairly coarse sandpaper. And if it gets around like on the sides, that's easy to take off. In fact, I can just wipe that off now. And after it's sanded, we'll see how it looks. And if it looks okay, then I'll go ahead and prime it, and we'll assemble it and paint it. And if it still looks like it needs some work, I'll take care of that then on Monday. But there's the kind of scabby, filled in kind of thing. There's a big gap there. You can see it, a really big gap that definitely needs to be filled in, because that would look really crappy. That's my PG rated naughty word. It would not look good. It would look poor. It would not look good. It would look bad. I know that, with this filler and with the sanding, this piece, I'm expecting this piece to end up looking pretty decent compared to the way it does now. I know that this is the inside of the cart, but you can still see it from the outside. And it should have wood grain, and it should look like a solid plank of wood instead of this. So if I want this model to be almost A quality in terms of a letter grade, and not just like a B or B minus. This kind of stuff is an important thing to be doing. And if I were really good at this, you would see it being done much better. Someone would be smoothing this in so that the seams were practically invisible now, and there wouldn't be a bunch of it globbing around all over the place. But I'm doing the best I can with the eyesight, hand coordination, and skill that I've got. I don't need to feather it. I sort of feathered it there. If I were, one approach to this would be to just like this, since the edge is higher, is to feather it down to the surface, right? But I'm going to sand the whole thing down so that it's the same. Basically, I'm going to sand off the raised ridges around the edges so that so everything is at the level of the interior piece, and that the sanding even affects the interior piece a little bit to give it some texture. Ordinarily, I would want to avoid having the scratch marks one gets, from the sanding marks. But in this case, I actually want them. I want the surface to be sort of rough because it's supposed to be wood. And they didn't print wood grain on it. So I'm going to just sand away at it and scar it up a little bit. I don't know if the stuff's drying or what. Anyway, I think it's filled in. If there's still a gap after it's been sanded, then I'll just reapply and resand. For whatever reason, I'm not getting much on here. Well, the reason is that after I do this stuff for a couple of hours, anybody who's watched any of these streams knows that things begin getting ragged. Okay. Hi. It's coming along. So I'm filling these in, be doing some sanding down on Monday, hopefully make these look like really nice pieces of wood. And then, complete the cart. So I'll be back on Monday, but I will not be here on Wednesday because we've got some work people coming in who are going to be disrupting this entire area. Everything. Putting in a new heat pump furnace. Getting ecological and modern here. It's going to take a couple of days, Wednesday and Thursday, and there's that. So this goes on pink and it dries white. And as I said, on Monday, I'm going to be taking a piece of sandpaper and I'm going to be taking this entire piece, probably a big piece of sandpaper, and rubbing the whole thing back and forth like this in the direction of the wood grain. Okay. To make this interior piece look good. I might as well. I'm just going to leave the clothespins on those. They don't need. Save my little spatula. I'm probably going to want this later. Let's see. I still have almost 20 minutes. The Porco Rosso minifig. Unfortunately, there are there are little seams showing, like on the shoulder and the arms, just little bits where the two parts of the injection molding came together. They're not real obvious, but you can see them on the side of the pants here, and I can feel them. Yeah, one side is raised up compared to the other. So that was not that well done. And that's going to, I want this to look good. And so I want to be spending some time going around and getting rid of those marks. There's some on this side. On this side, it looks like there's a big gap in the pants here. And I don't think he has stripes on his pants. I think it's just not molded right. So yeah, the seam's real obvious on the shoulder and in places like that. So this is going to require a little bit of close attention. What I can do is file off some of these big chunks, and then on Monday I'll, at the beginning, closer to the beginning of the stream, after I get these pieces put together, so that they're ready to be primed for painting. Kind of on the minifig. Some of this depends on when the paint arrives. I don't have the paint of the color for the hull and for these wooden parts. That's on order, and it's supposed to arrive sometime between tomorrow and next week, Friday. So I can prep the parts so that they don't have these sprue bits all over them. And I can test fit them, but I can't do I can't do any painting until I have the paint. Yeah. Get most of this off, but some of this is going to require really pretty delicate sanding. I don't want to mar the figure. But I also don't want the molding seams to be showing. Well, since I'm doing this, what I can do, though, I'm going to get the other one out, too. And then since I'm going to be messing around with these, and they have the same color scheme, there's wow, yeah, the sprue is right on the goggles. Nice. Okay. I can say with certainty that I am disappointed in the minifig here, even though it's a really nicely done minifig. They put the sprues in really bad spots, and they have way too much. And the seams are showing way too much. So I'm going to be the prep of the minifig is going to be it's just going to be tedious, and it's going to take a while because I don't want the flaws to be showing, and I don't want to create more flaws. And this plastic there's just more of it than on the rest of the model parts. So okay, well, this will be something to work on Monday. Let me not leave this here. The other Porco Rosso sits inside the canopy, and his head is separate from his body. It's also smaller. As you can see, the sitting inside the cockpit is a different scale. This is just a display thing with its own stand. It has its own stand eventually. It goes there, and it's just a display part. It's not part of the model itself. This Porco Rosso is supposed to sit in this chair. After I cut this off, I'm going to see. It looks like it doesn't. And I'm taking this off because, if I'm going to be spending time Monday fixing one Porco Rosso, I might as well fix the other Porco Rosso. Oh, it's like half the plastic in the universe is attached to this guy. That's going to take some abrading to get that off. So Porco here is decapitated. It well, I guess his butt kind of does fit. It's way back here. I'm not sure. I can't see well enough right now to see how this is supposed to fit. I see he's got like a mask over his face. This is supposed to be cleaned up and then attached. His head is supposed to go there, so that's going to take some work. And it's got some bad seams along the side of his head. I don't know if that shows up on camera very well, but right along here, along the jawline and across the top, it looks like they tried to design the mold so that it didn't interfere with it too much, but it's pretty clear that there are mold marks along the ears. Plastic to come off here. I'm just getting rid of some of it in anticipation of yeah. I'm gonna fix the head and the body separately. But on Monday, in addition to sanding these down, assembling it, taking care of any flaws in the assembly, and getting it ready for priming and painting, I'm talking about the cart. I'll be working on these parts as well, getting the sprues, the remnants of the sprues off of them, and test fitting them. Probably could have cut this closer to the neck. I probably could have done that, but I didn't. So it took a little more filing than I expected. And then I'm going to stop soon because the file cuts pretty hard. At least the sprue was attached to the bottom of the neck, so it doesn't, interfere with the detail of its head and goggles and things like that. The rest of that will need to be sanded off, little bits at a time, and then eventually his head will be united with his body there around the collar of his flight suit. Since I'm getting near the end of the stream here, I'm just going to do this course work, not like a course. I mean a course like a school course. I mean course like in not fine. fine as in fine-grained. It's a big chunk of plastic that needs to come off. So I'm just filing at it. Yeah. I find that just about this time, like about 3 hours into it, 2.5, being in the basement is long enough. It's another reason I'm going to the 10-to-1. Already I'm starting to feel a little post-nasal drip and coughing a little bit. Right. So as I'm winding up here, Dice and Dungeons is a group of family and friends who have gotten together for the purpose of putting on a Dungeons and Dragons show. And that's what Dice and Dungeons is all about. Not this. This is just a spin-off. You know, it's like one of those sequels or spin-offs that aren't nearly as good as the original show. And that's the case for this. But our Dungeons and Dragons show streams 3 Sundays a month at 2 o'clock Eastern time with a live chat. And all of the previous episodes, over 100 of them now, are on YouTube. So if anybody who wants to catch up, get some backstories, relive entertaining moments, that sort of thing, should check that out on YouTube. It's really pretty good. So I want everybody and everybody and everyone else to either become a follower on Twitch or a subscriber on YouTube or both. And if you really like what you see, or don't really like it anyway, it doesn't matter if you like it or not, go to patreon.com/Dice and Dungeons and you can become a patron of Dice and Dungeons. But our Dungeons and Dragons show, I have to say, it's really amazing. It really is. Our DM, Alexis, is incredibly creative and sometimes incredibly tolerant also, because we as players more than once have totally strayed from what she was planning to have happen. Went off in a totally separate direction more than once, which was fun for us, but kind of, anyway. Catch it, watch it, enjoy it, become a follower, a subscriber, and a patron of Dice and Dungeons. And this is just, I don't know, a painting, modeling, filing, sanding show where I mumble on about things and complain about the build quality of the models that I have and try to get them to look good. And sometimes talk about really exciting things like how transistors destroyed entire industries. Or, which was better, the Flintstones or the Jetsons, and why. Stuff like that. I got to talk about the space race a lot while I was building the Apollo model. That was kind of fun. Because living through the space race, it was a pretty exciting time. Amazing things happened in a short period of time. Okay, well, I'm going to not go too far on messing with this because this is a really important part. And these edges here where the sprue is have to be very carefully sanded down so that they match the rest of the model and don't, especially on the bottom here, don't become an eyesore. This show started because of dungeon tiles and minifigs that were produced for the show and appear during the show. And when there aren't any of those, then I work on these models like this one, which is why I'm working on a model now, because I don't have any dungeon tiles or minifigs to paint for the show. But I want you all to become followers, subscribers, and patrons for Dice and Dungeons. Thanks for the new follow. I really appreciate it. this is like I've got a couple minutes. We have these amazing dungeon tiles that we produced ourselves on the printers back there. We hand painted all of these on the stream, actually, a long, long time ago. And they have these ball magnets underneath. And so they attach to each other. Isn't that amazing? And you can take them apart, put them together, rearrange your dungeon any way you want, have cool details like operating doors. I don't know if what I was doing was even on screen. I didn't even look up to see. Well, that was very well. You can see the production quality of this stream is basement workbench piece of cardboard, old guy working with surplus equipment. Yeah. So on Monday, I'm going to continue working on the Savoia here. We're sanding these down, test fitting the components of the cart. If it all seems to be coming together, I'm going to assemble it and do any final finishing, sanding down of any flaws, that kind of thing. And that gets it ready for priming and painting. I will be able to paint the wheels. These are prepped, cleaned, ready to be primed and painted. So I'll be painting wheels on Monday. Most of the time, I'll just be prepping parts and test fitting them for the rest of the fuselage. And moving on, then, if these all fit together and they're test fit well, there's some gluing here, then I'll move on to these tiny little bits, these itsy little bitty bits of control levers and things that fit into the cockpit area. So there's that. And I'm going to gradually, once I get the wood-colored paint for the hull of this, just working my way through the instructions here, cutting off the pieces, prepping them, cementing them, filling in gaps, so on, and actually doing some painting as things go along. I'm looking at this. This is the engine. The engine detail fits inside this cowling. Yeah, there's just a lot of detail there, and then there's some obviously some important instructions here that I need to translate. I mean, some of this is just like stick one part on another, paint it a certain color. And those are the names of the colors, okay, because that's just consistent from one spot to the other. I'm just looking at stuff and trying to make sure I'm not making a mistake. Yeah, these are just color names. Okay, that's good. But these are instructions. And this is something big. This is a big deal here somehow, the way this is all put together. So I am definitely going to have to read that, get that translated to see what that's saying. And I'm also having to remember to bring down my color chart because I prepared a color chart that matches these numbers to the numbers of the Tamiya paint that I'll be using for the most part. I'm not going to be using Tamiya paint on these, though. I'm going to be using some Viejo metal colors because they cover pretty nicely. All right, enough of that. Time to wrap up. I can feel it. I need to take a break here. I'm going to be back on Monday, and again, I'll be going from 10 until 1. I will not be streaming on Wednesday because of all the work that's going to be being done here in the basement. Will definitely interfere with getting anything else done. And then on Friday, and I'll be making ongoing slow but steady progress on the Savoia model. Setting these pieces here. They're all going to be sanded, so I don't care if they get a little dusty. But I don't want them to get real dusty, so I'll cover them up with a paper towel. Take this up with me because this is going to be primed. Clean the work surface just a little bit and say thanks for joining in. Hi, Viper. Thanks so much for becoming a follower. Tell other people to become followers. I'd like to have a lot of followers. Why not? Because more is better. I'm sorry. The other reason to end about one is I start becoming even less coherent. Even less coherent, if you can believe that, after about 12:30 than I was at the beginning. Dyson Dungeon says, thank you. Please watch our show. Please watch our Dungeons and Dragons show. Become a Dyson Dungeons and Dragon fan. Encourage other people to do that. Send us messages on social media telling us how amazing our Dungeon Master is. And I will be back on Monday plugging away at the Porco Rosso Savoia S.21 plane. And when we finally get our sticky paper, printing off control panels for the Apollo model so that at some point in the future, probably not next week, but maybe the week after or the week after that, finishing the Apollo completely, showing that off a little bit, and then finding some way of storing it so it's not in the way. Putting a cover on the box. That's it. That's what it's going to look like when it's done. This is what it's supposed to look like when it's done. Like that. And that's what the inside looks like. Because if the top of the plane pulls off and you can see the detail on the inside, it's pretty amazing. I hope I do a good job. See you all on Monday. Have a good weekend. Thanks.